if I wish.
His
No,
ass does not want to say hi.
yeah, he's chilling.
What?
Trying to kiss me.
Oh. Yeah, the cat was on the dog bed earlier, and then my mom told me that the dog walked up to her and licked a big stripe up her face. And then just now at dinner, the cat came out and was chilling. I was saying hi to my parents. We're eating dinner in the other room, and Scout walks over and just starts licking her face.
She loves her.
I know. I'm like, you better not start cleaning her ears, because she's got meds in her ears.
Great. That'd be wonderful.
Yeah, just what we need, the dog going to the vet right now.
Yeah. I'm stressed out. I don't know how I'm gonna use this bathroom.
You'll live.
No, they're like
They're
dropping
hanging.
down, dude.
Yeah, well, they're growing up. They're babies, and now they're growing up. They're teenagers.
I'm gonna kill myself.
Do they not make, like,
Uh,
spider traps like they make ant traps? I don't know how it works.
I've been like,
Diatomaceous earth. Whatever that is. You've been like, what?
I don't know what you just said. Um, I've been spraying, and then they went away, and then now they're
Just
coming back
spray
out.
again.
I did,
Okay, then
I
you're
did,
fine. You'll
but they're
live.
like everywhere. I'm like,
Alright.
I don't.
Well, push it out of your mind. You need to lock in. What happened last time? I thought that was a
Um,
tampon. I was like, what are you doing? I was like, why are you doing that?
it does look like a
It's the applicator.
tampon.
You just rub it on your lips like it actually is chapstick.
And put it in my
Funny
mouth.
prank. Okay, what
It would
happened?
be funny. Um,
Mooching.
when did we? Yeah, we're like in the
Volcano.
we're in the volcano. They're in the like an armory.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they're like mooching. They're pointing fingers at mooching because uh he's sus.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and mooching says that he got cursed shackles because Junwoo was like, I want you to betray Shelian, and he was like, no.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then as he was leaving, he saw Function trying to look for his baby mama,
Yes, baby mama.
and and he's like, you have to. This there's no way. So he knocked him out
Mm-hmm.
to get him
He was trying to get him out, but
to
then
get him
he
out,
couldn't get him
and
out.
but then Transformers happened.
Mm-hmm.
So that was impossible, and so he ended up there. And then
He was acting sus because he felt he was scared that Function fucking died because he knocked him out.
yeah, um, and Hua Chong is like, I don't believe you.
Yeah, Hua Chung is
Um,
sassy because he brought up the incident on the mountain
yeah,
where
yes,
yeah, and
the
Shilian's
mountain
just
incident.
like, how did he know this? And then he revealed that that's what the two were shouting on the mountain a while
Wait,
ago. And
wait.
Shilian was like, okay, that makes sense that he would know that, but I, why would he? He's like making connections between the 33
Yeah,
officials that he killed in the past
yeah,
and
yeah.
wondering if it's the people from the mountain.
Right.
And then
Uh,
they're arguing, and then Mu Ching disappears, and then they're like, "Where the
he
fuck did he
vanished.
go?"
Yeah.
And then all like the swords and stuff are coming alive and like are gonna hurt them.
Right. Right. That is accurate.
Let me sit up a little. Ugh.
And they can't leave. They can't leave.
Yeah, so Mu Ching disappears. Function hadn't wholly believed the things he'd accused Mu Ching of, and the sharp words he'd exchanged with his old rival were mostly uttered out of anger. But now, he really didn't know what to say. It was a long moment before he finally managed. "Your Highness, Mu Ching, could he really have... "Let's not talk about this right now," Shilian quickly replied. "These weapons are about to riot. We have to think of a way to calm them down. Otherwise, we'll be chopped to mush." With that, he pulled Fang Shin off his back. However, Hua Cheng resolutely pressed down on his hand. Taken aback, Shilian turned and saw Hua Cheng staring at him intently. Red was slowly spreading around the rim of his eye. "Guga, what are you planning to do with that sword?" he asked darkly. So now we're on chapter 126. 100-yard high cliffs, thousands tilt over lava falls. Shilian blinked. "I wasn't planning on doing anything." "Then why did you draw that weapon?" Hua Cheng demanded. "To defend myself?" Shilian replied. Hua Cheng's expression was terrifyingly dark, and he squeezed Shilian's hand harder. "How do you plan on defending yourself? Put that sword down!" That was the first time Hua Cheng had ever spoken to him in such a tone, or worn that kind of expression. It shocked Shilian. "Who are you to force him to put his sword down?" Function said, alarmed. "Let him do what he wants!" A battle axe hurtled straight at them. Shilian raised his blade and slashed with one swift motion, sending the axe flying. "How do I plan on defending myself? Like this!" Only then did Hua Cheng's demeanor and tone relax a little. Still, he didn't let Shilian go. "You don't need to defend yourself. Just stand behind me. Put the sword down." While on the move, Function accidentally stepped on his bow, which was still on the ground. He retrieved it and gripped it in both hands, raising it high to wield like a sword, then batted away a meteor hammer. He glanced their way warily. "What are you doing grabbing him like that? Are you actually the real thing? Your Highness, are you sure you're the only one who knows Crimson Rain-Flower's verbal password?" Shilian realized that Hua Cheng's spiritual communication password wasn't a secret between the two of them alone. A third person had heard it before. Zhen Wu. He had heard it very clearly at the palace of Shenle when he forced Shilian to contact Hua Cheng and monitored their conversation. But Shilian still felt that the person standing before him was the real Hua Cheng, without a doubt. It was just... he must have thought of something unpleasant, which was why he was acting this way. Let me cough.
Let go.
After a moment of contemplation, Shilian replied, "All right," and put Fang Shin away. In the next second, the scimitar was unsheathed with a flash of silver light. The entire armory shimmered brilliantly the moment Ming emerged. Sparks flew, and the cracking of metal reverberated and echoed non-stop. Shilian and Feng Shin stood motionless and trapped at the center of the chaotic light show, hemmed in by chilling glares and killing aura. After no more than 10 blows, Hua Cheng turned around and resheathed his scimitar. Shilian's gaze moved from Hua Cheng to the ground beneath him. Ming had slashed hundreds of weapons to pieces. Shilian crouched, feeling grave pity as he picked up 2 sword fragments. Those were all such good, rare swords. "Your Highness," Function spoke up just then. "The door! A new door appeared!" Shilian dropped the fragments and stood up. "I see. So we can only leave once we've dealt with the weapons." Opening the doors should have required the spilling of blood, but Hua Cheng had forced them open more directly. Just as that thought crossed Shilian's mind, Hua Cheng took his hand and started dragging him out the door. Seeing that Hua Cheng was boiling with murderous intent, Function asked them both, "What do you plan on doing next?" "Find Master and Mu Ching, of course," Shilian replied. "And then, if Mu Ching really surrendered to Zhen Wu, I'll take his shit life," Hua Cheng stated calmly. The trio exited the armory and walked for a while. Shilian hesitated, but in the end he still asked the question that was nagging at him. Sunlong, did you think I was going to stab myself earlier? Huacheng didn't respond, but his expression was still extremely sour. I wouldn't have, Shilian added. Huacheng gave him a look. Really? That look made Shilian feel quite guilty. At one point in his life, perhaps he really would have done that, in a truly dire situation. But now, he never would again. Yes, I promised you, Shilian replied. Besides, there were so many weapons. Sabers, spears, swords. Wouldn't I have been reduced to mush if they all stabbed me? He started to laugh, but the sound died in his throat. Huacheng's head had jerked back to stare at him the moment he said the word stabbed. His gaze was hard to describe, but it obliterated all the words Shilian had to say. Without warning, Huacheng reached out and wrapped his arms around him, hard. Function, bringing up the rear, was shaken at the sight. What the fuck? I'm still here, you know! Shilian blinked and patted Huacheng's back. What's wrong? Your Highness, please don't laugh like that anymore, Huacheng whispered. He hugged Shilian tightly. It's not funny. Really, it's not funny at all. Recalling how upset Huacheng had been when he picked up the skulls coated with corpse poison, Shilian was apologetic. I'm sorry. I won't joke about that with you again. I just didn't want you to worry. I didn't think it would have the opposite effect. The mood startled Function, and he stood there baffled for a while, unsure how to react. Eventually, he said, I agree, since he's so serious about it. Huacheng finally released Shilian. Let's go, he said quietly. Without the state preceptor to lead the way, the three of them had no choice but to continue into the depths of the palace. They hadn't been walking for long when Shilian sensed something unusual in the air. Don't you think it's gotten hotter? Shilian said. When they initially entered the underground palace, a haunting chill had permeated the area. But after walking for a while, the air around them had started to feel warmer and warmer until it was sweltering. Function felt it too. He glanced back, then stopped in surprise. Your Highness, behind us! Function pointed. There's a light! When the others turned, they also saw a light behind them, slowly moving closer. It was rather strange to stumble on an unknown light source in the pitch-black underground. Had someone come? By the time the light revealed its true appearance, Shilian finally realized that the suffocating, sweltering heat in the air wasn't his imagination. The light itself had brought it to them. A bubbling scarlet gold lava stream was rolling down the slope towards them. The lava outside had flowed into the underground palace, along the water course. Oh no, Shilian cried internally. Suddenly he sensed someone rapidly approaching from behind, then dashing past. He tossed his hand, and his silk band whipped out in an instant. Please wait, we just need to ask for directions. The man was barely able to dodge, but it did slow him down for a moment. In the light of the nearby lava stream, they could make out the man's face. Mooching! Function shouted. You bastard, stop right there! As if Mooching would do any such thing. Without another word, he broke into a run. The others were about to give chase and strike, when the ground shook violently. The scarlet gold lava surged and swelled over the river's banks, spreading with great speed and rushing straight towards them. They were about to be overtaken, but Shilian had already encountered an identical problem before coming here. This time, the difficulty level was just a little bit higher. Function, there are probably many empty-shelled people in the lava, he said. They'll float, so you can step on them to keep from sinking. Then he targeted an empty-shelled person vigorously paddling its arms in the lava flow and jumped on. When he landed, Shilian was delighted to discover that these empty-shelled people were larger than the ones he'd previously encountered. Even when he touched down on their backs, they only dipped slightly and kept floating on the surface of the lava stream. As long as the creatures didn't start anything, they could practically serve as little boats. Function targeted one and leapt aboard. He brandished his bow and threatened the empty-shelled person. Swim properly, don't sink! The threat of a weapon naturally made the empty-shelled person work even harder, not daring to offend him. Meanwhile, Hua Cheng only had to cross his arms and glance down for his empty-shelled person to behave and abandon all thoughts of trying to anything wicked. It swam the fastest, going full power the whole way. As for Shilian, he joined his hands together in a prayer, and very sincerely negotiated with his empty-shelled person. "Take me for this ride, please take me for this ride. I'll burn incense for you afterwards. You don't want incense? Then what offerings do you want? Just let me know." The empty-shelled person was obviously extremely dissatisfied, and every so often it would swing its arms to try and force him off. But Shilian was as sticky as gum, and even as he tumbled, he refused to be bucked. As usual, Shilian had found himself in the worst position of them all. The three of them rode these creatures and flowed with the current. The further downstream they went on their rafts, the steeper the slope became, and the faster they went. Over and over they had to dodge obstacles jutting out from below the molten rock. It was a journey of endless perils. After a while, they finally caught up to Mu Qing. "Mu Qing! Why are you running?" Function yelled. Mu Qing was also using an empty-shelled person as a surfboard, and he shouted his response over his shoulder. "What? Should I wait for all of you to attack me together?" There was a bow in Function's hand, but no arrows, so he could only shout back, "We won't attack you! First explain how you suddenly disappeared from the armory." Mu Qing looked back again, sneering. "You all!" Before he finished, Shilian saw what lay ahead. His pupils shrank rapidly, and he shouted, "Ahead of you!" Mu Qing whirled around. Only then did he discover that their path was coming to an abrupt end. Some sort of underground chasm opened up in front of them, with a vertical drop hundreds of meters down. The lava rushed towards it, faster and faster, as their sloping path grew steeper, carrying them towards the precipice. Mu Qing was caught by surprise at the sudden stop, and by the time he came to his senses, he was already tumbling through the air. Mu Qing and the empty-shelled person under his feet disappeared in the blink of an eye. The other three were only a few moments behind, rushing towards the cliff's edge. At the last second, Royer flew out far behind them and wound itself a few times around an upturned palace eave, then tied itself into a knot. With one hand gripping Royer and the other firmly around Hua Cheng, Shilian set the other end of the silk band towards Feng Shin. "Catch!" With the silk band to link them, the three clumsily steadied themselves. They were only 6 meters away from the drop at most. If they'd been just one step slower, they would have gone over. They'd literally saved themselves on the edge of a precipice. But lava was still pouring down non-stop, so Shilian gave another order. "Withdraw!" Royer quickly shortened itself and carried the three of them towards the palace. Soon after, they leapt onto the roof. It was a larger building than the one surrounding it, so its roof was quite spacious. There was no fear of its stone foundation getting washed away by the lava, so they could relax for now. After steadying himself for a moment, Function stared at the cliff's edge in shock. It was a long moment before he said in disbelief, "Did Mu Qing fall?" Let me drink. Huh?
Said I can't get over this tampon.
Shut the fuck up. Mu Qing could be dead, bitch.
Stop! I know! I'm coping!
Shilian had just barely managed to steady his pounding heart. Wiping away beads of sweat on his forehead, he panted and replied, "He didn't!" Poking his head out to peer over the furthest edge of the palace rooftop, Shilian could see a long saber nailed into the rocks at the edge of the cliff, and a pair of hands clutching its hilt tightly. Below the hands was a red, flustered face with vigorously gritted teeth. Right now, Mu Qing was in a horrifying position. He was hanging parallel to the waterfall of flowing lava. Fiery sparks splashed his face, literally burning his brow, which is an expression for a desperate situation. If it wasn't for the sheen of the spiritual light protecting his body and blocking most of the searing heat, his whole head would have been on fire, burnt beyond recognition. But that protective layer of spiritual light wouldn't last long, and his bones would still dissolve into nothing if he fell into the pool of lava. It was nerve-wracking just to see him. Function asked, "What should we do? Your Highness, can that white silk band of yours reach him?" Shilian had already tried that and was now calling Royer back to pat the flames off it. "I can't. He's too far. Royer caught fire part way." Small tongues of flame were singeing Mooching's robes, and the hilt of his saber was scorching hot. Yet he still gripped it hard, afraid to let go and afraid to look down. If he let go, there was nothing but a pool of blazing fire waiting for him below. The countless spirits of the dead wailed, their starving cries echoing all around. It was like they were calling out to the one struggling to hang on for dear life above them, beseeching him to hurry and join their cohort. Mooching held onto the saber's hilt with a death grip, his pale forehead covered with sweat. When he saw the others in the distance, his mouth moved like he wanted to call for help. But even at a time like this, he was the kind of person who had great difficulty forcing the words help or save me past his lips. Besides, no matter how easy it would be for Hua Cheng to save him, he probably wouldn't. It was hard to tell with Feng Shen, too. Shilian was the only one who would be willing to rescue him, had the ability to do so, and could persuade the other two to help. In the end, Mooching pulled himself up with enormous effort to shout to Shilian, veins bulging slightly on his forehead as he did. "Your Highness!" Shilian was scanning the area rapidly, but looked at him when he heard the call. Mooching held back for a good while, then sucked in a breath and yelled with a beet-red face. "Believe me! Your Highness, you know I'm not lying, right? You know I wouldn't have really harmed any of you, right?" The way he spoke to Shilian, so full of hope, like he was hanging on to the last thread of his life, made Shilian remember another scene from another time. A time many, many years ago, when he begged Mooching with the same desperate hope as dusk fell overhead. "You know I'm not lying, right?" How had Mooching answered him back then? He hadn't thought about that time for centuries, but Mooching's question dragged the memories from the dusty corners where they were sealed away. Countless images and voices broke loose and flashed across his mind. It was only then that Shilian realized he remembered every detail incredibly clearly, that he had never forgotten a thing. Mooching didn't receive an answer. Shilian's unusual silence sent his mind back to the same scene. As he realized that he'd asked for help with the wrong words, and in doing so reminded Shilian of something he shouldn't have at a time like this, the color of his face slowly changed. From behind Shilian, Hua Cheng spoke quietly. "Gaga, before you make your decision, I must remind you of a few things." Shilian finally snapped out of it. "What is it?" "First," Hua Cheng said, "unless the lava stops flowing, rescuing him will mean risking your own life." But who knew when it would stop? The saber's hilt was already red hot. Mooching wouldn't be able to hold on to it for much longer. How could he possibly hang on until then? Shilian stayed quiet, and Hua Cheng continued. "Second, if Mooching has already given himself to Zhenwu will certainly have a way to extract him from peril. But you, on the other hand, you will definitely be risking your life. And the possibility that he has indeed surrendered is significant. Think about the way he's acted this entire trip. Knocking Feng Shen out, luring them into the armory, refusing to admit that he attacked Feng Shen, and even making accusations back, disappearing without a word after the armory went berserk, the coincidental timing of the lava stream's intrusion, all that had brought them to where they were now. Was he once again attempting to lead Shilian to his demise? Shilian's silence was stretching a bit long. The saber's hilt was burning hot, and Mooching let out a loud shout. He dropped one hand and hung on for a while, using only the other, but didn't dare support himself like that for too long, and quickly clutched the hilt with both once again. Wisps of white vapor were smoking from both palms, and while there was quite a distance between them, those on the palace roof could almost smell the stench of burning flesh. Hua Cheng casually let loose a silver butterfly. The silver butterfly fluttered its wings and flew 100 paces, but it dissipated into silver smoke and vanished before it got even a third of the way to Mooching. Shilian understood he was demonstrating that the wraith butterflies couldn't help, that it was a dead end and not worth dying for. Mooching also saw the silver butterfly vanish, and his expression gradually turned into one of resignation as he understood. No one here could save him, and no one believed him. Thanks to his choice of words triggering unpleasant memories, there was no reason for Shilian to help him at the risk of his own life. Frustration bubbled up at the unfairness of it all. But he refused to give up, even on the brink of despair. Muching gritted his teeth and shouted to them, "If you don't believe me, that's fine too. But I will never fall that easily." He gripped the hilt hard and attempted a mid-air spin to stand upon it. Yet he had only raised himself a few inches before he sank violently. Muching's eyes reflected the countless blood-red, vengeful spirits that had merged with the lava below. Their faces and limbs contorted and twisted as they pressed themselves onto his leg and pulled him down. The vengeful spirits were originally one with the lava, but they popped out without warning, one after another, to hang from his lower body, heavy and boiling hot. It was like adding oil to fire, or frost to snow, and Muching was driven to the verge of madness. "Get lost!" It wasn't like he had never come close to death over the course of centuries, but it had always been when he was heavily wounded in some conflict. A death by drowning in lava was 1,000 times more horrifying than death by injury. He imagined himself turning into a wisp of smoke, like that wraith butterfly, leaving the world without a trace, and couldn't stand it. At last Muching's hands reached their limit. His fingers loosened slightly, no longer able to maintain their grip. The space under the saber emptied. He had fallen. A silhouette plunged downwards to the blazing lava pool. Let me drink. Place your bets. Is he gonna die?
3.
Despite his devastated screams, once he'd plunged for a bit, the drop came to a violent stop. He was suspended in midair. Head half numb, Muching hadn't yet regained his senses. His instinctive reactions were still intact, though, and he quickly felt his body, to discover that a white silk band had wrapped itself around his waist. It was Royer, of course. But the palace where Shilian perched was nowhere near the cliff where Muching fell. If Royer couldn't reach earlier, how could it have caught him after he had fallen so far? Muching gazed upwards, and discovered with considerable shock that Shilian wasn't on the palace roof at all. He was right above his own head. Earlier, Muching had nailed his long saber into the rocks and managed to hang on to the hilt for some time. And right now Shilian was half crouched upon that very hilt. Shilian was rapidly reeling Royer in, and he only breathed in relief when he saw Muching was all right. Thank goodness I made it in time." Your Highness?" Muching muttered. The events of the last few seconds had been too much for his frazzled brain to sort out, leaving him deeply confused. The roof was so far from the cliff's edge, with no landing points en route within the rolling lava. Shilian could have only jumped halfway at most. How had he gotten here? In the distance, Function's voice rang out. "Your Highness! Are you both all right?" When Muching glanced in his direction, he saw Huacheng and Function standing atop the palace roof. Huacheng was watching them. Huacheng was watching them with his arms crossed, focused solely on ensuring Shilian's safety, and indifferent to anything else. At the midpoint between the palace and the cliff where he fell, a frigid, ink-black longsword stood upright in the incessant flow of red-hot lava. Fangshin. So that was it. Muching finally understood how Shilian had made the crossing. At most, Shilian could only make half the needed jump. He'd never be able to make it all the way from the safety of the palace rooftop to rescue him from the cliff. Thus, Shilian had hurled out Fangshin and nailed it into the lava stream to create a landing point. Using Fangshin as a stepping stone, he then leapt onto Muching's saber and just barely caught him with Royer at the last second. "I was trying to think of a way over. It took some time, since there was nothing helpful lying around," Shilian said. "You were also panicking. Don't lose your head. Otherwise, you'll only fall faster." Muching had thought that Shilian's silence was him hesitating on whether to save him. But it turned out that Shilian was just trying to think of how to save him. And thank goodness that he'd kept such a clear head in such a dire situation. The beads of sweat on Muching's forehead rolled thicker as he looked up and saw that Shilian had reached down for him, a broad smile on his face. "In any case, I know it's a bit overdue, but I'm not extending a hand too late, right?" Perhaps it was because he had been gripping the saber hilt for too long, but Muching's arms felt impossibly heavy. He couldn't raise them an inch. Shilian stretched his hand lower. "Come." Muching finally took hold. His entire arm trembled, but Shilian yanked forcefully and pulled him up. The pair stood together on the hilt of Mooching's long saber, and Shilian turned around to wave at the palace roof. Sanlang, it worked! Very good, Gaga, Hua Cheng replied. Now come back, right this instant. Okay, I'll be right over, Shilian responded, and then said to Mooching, Can you still jump? If not, I can take you. Mooching's lips moved. Shilian studied his expression and said decisively, I'll take you. He grabbed him by the scruff of his robes. In the past, Mooching probably would have rolled his eyes and protested Shilian's manhandling, griping about the disrespect. But now, Mooching couldn't muster a single word. Shilian was just about to leap, when they both unexpectedly felt their feet dip. As if things weren't bad enough, the long saber driven into the rocks just had to pick that exact time to come loose. Hua Cheng's face changed color. Gaga! This time, two figures plunged together towards the crimson-red lava pool. Shilian could still think fast in that sort of ass-to-the-fire moment. He shouted, It's fine! He spun several times in midair and caught the long saber by the hilt with both hands, then wedged it into the rocks once more. Clang! Sparks flew, brilliant and dazzling like grains of gold, flecked across Shilian's protective aura of spiritual light. Without that aura, even a speck of those flames could burn a large hole in someone. Royer pulled Mooching up, and Shilian said to him solemnly, This saber won't be able to take the weight of two grown men for long. This can't continue. Between the two of us, only one can remain. Mooching slowly came back to his senses. Are you saying... You can go, Shilian said. Flummoxed, Mooching's pupil shrank. Before he could speak, Shilian grabbed him and hurled him upward with a shout. Watch your landing! Mooching was thrown away from the cliff and quickly found that he was flying towards where Fangshan stood. Pulling himself together, he flipped in the air and landed on the hilt of the sword. Only then did he understand why Shilian had to throw him. Perhaps Shilian could make the long jump from the saber hilt from its new position several dozen paces below, but he couldn't make a jump that long. The only way he was going to make it that far was with the help of Shilian's mighty throw. Fangshan wiped away his cold sweat. Thank goodness, your highness reacts fast. Hua Cheng, however, still wore a severe expression. Gaga, if you don't come back now, I'm going to have to come and get you, he called down below. His voice carried a note of warning, and Shilian hurried to reply, I'm coming back up now. Everything's fine. I can handle it. I can jump back myself. Don't come down here. Only then did Hua Cheng's demeanor relax a little, though he still watched Shilian with an unblinking gaze. Fangshan glanced at him and couldn't help but say, I'm a little surprised. What? Hua Cheng replied, not turning or showing a single trace of curiosity. Fangshan scratched his head. Since you're so biased against Mooching, I assumed you'd think he wasn't worth saving and wouldn't want his highness rescuing him. I thought you'd prevent him from going. Only then did Hua Cheng spare him a glance. Half wrong, half right. Huh? The first part isn't wrong. I certainly don't think he's worth saving, Hua Cheng said. I don't care if he lives or dies. Isn't that a little too blunt? Seeing that apathetic expression made Fangshan start to sweat. When he realized that this man definitely held the same attitudes towards him, he sweat even harder. Hua Cheng snorted. Then after a pause, he added, But only his highness can decide what he wants to do. I will never oppose his decisions. Hua Cheng had never heard anyone say something like that before. Not a man to a woman, and most definitely not one man to another. But he was quite sure that Shilian would only get all worked up and flustered again if he'd been here to hear it. Ah, I see, Fangshan said, not knowing what face to make. Hua Cheng turned back to stare at Shilian, who was studying the fiery lava flow all around and formulating his plan, and gave a smile. Besides, I already knew he was going to do this. On the other side, Shilian called out, Mooching, hurry and move to the rooftop. And don't run away again. We can talk out our problems properly later. Only then did Mooching realize that if he didn't leave Fangshan, Shilian would have nowhere to land for his next step. Forcing himself to think calmly, Mooching was just about to leap to the rooftop, when Shilian cried out from below. Who's there? As Shilian stood on the saber, silently storing energy, the lava fall behind him had suddenly parted. A pair of hands stretched out from the other side of the falls and quickly seized him. The creature had clearly come from within the lava flow, and its hands were frighteningly cold, and Shilian shuddered at their touch. He heard Hua Cheng exclaim from above, "Your Highness!" The owner of the hands hugged Shilian tightly, then threw them both off the saber. Shilian was shocked, but those above saw very clearly what had seized him from behind. It was a man clad in white robes, who wore a half-crying, half-smiling mask, as if he was rejoicing, as if he was grieving. White no face. Sensing danger, Roye whipped out on its own, flinging itself upward and casting itself before Mu Ching. Mu Ching grabbed it reflexively, but the power holding the other end was too great. Not only couldn't he reel it in, it yanked him down with it too. As he plunged amidst the wild, fiery sparks, Shilian heard the creature laughing in his ear. "Ha ha ha ha! Naive! Too naive, Shenle. Did you really think it would be that easy to achieve a perfect, happy ending?" Scorching waves of heat came from below, but his mind shivered with deadly cold. Awash in conflicting ice and fire, Shilian caught a glimpse of the domed ceiling, glowing with firelight. He could vaguely see a shape in silhouette, a red figure approaching rapidly. Hua Cheng had jumped down too. But wait, the lava pool was right below. That's the end of the chapter. Bro,
Kill myself.
I'm gonna kill myself. My boys! My boys! Mu
It
Ching was like, "Oh
hurt.
my god, he's not gonna save me because I didn't help him up that one time," and Shilian was literally just thinking of the way to save him the entire time, and then Hua Cheng was like, "I knew he'd do this."
Yeah.
Ugh, kills me.